Hello everyone. Following my last reaction on the story of the American Revolutionary War, like the animated version, I thought I'd get a bit of a broader perspective as well, learn a touch more. Actually, I want to learn as much as I possibly can. So stay tuned because after this video, I will be doing the Civil War, not Civil War, the Revolutionary War oversimplified. Is the more animated version, and there's two parts. So stay tuned for that. But for this video, this is a sort of a more serious one. We're going to be learning more. If you don't know as much as you can about the Revolutionary War already, then you're going to be learning with me. If not, you can be watching me learn something brand new. Well, not brand new, but learning, more facts in a different format also. If I haven't mentioned already, which I have in previous videos, I am adding a super thanks button at the bottom of the screen. You can that's for donations to the channel, which helps us run and keeps us afloat. I'm not asking for all of your money. You can absolutely donate absolutely anything you want to. It can be something as low as 10 cents if you really want to, or even 1 cent. It's honestly just a show of support, which I've already had an outpouring of already, which is absolutely great, and it really helps us as a channel move forward. I'm also going to be donating 20% of the proceeds to a chosen charity at the end of May. I know there's been a disaster in Texas, and if we can provide some sort of relief in the great state of Texas, that is our aim also. So I won't keep you too long. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Leave any comments down below, and let's get to this video.
This video is brought to you by Captivating History. The American Revolution refers to a seismic moment in history. First, because of the fact it led to the formation of the United States, a country whose economic and military power has been felt across the world. The Massachusetts Minutemen, who fired the shots heard around the world at Lexington and Concord, likely had little idea of the eventual influence that their rebellion against British taxation would have.
For sure, their mind will be blown.
Secondly, the causes that the revolution came to represent: liberty, representation, freedom, and independence laid the foundations for social democracies for the following centuries. Famous figures such as George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams could not have foreseen the almost holy reverence with which their words have been treated since. While the effects of the revolution may not have been immediately revolutionary, it's clear that the 13 colonies' struggle for independence from British rule has had a significant and lasting impact. As with any revolutionary moment, it's vital to take a step back and examine the causes and progression leading up to the eventual British surrender in 1783.
Wow, that's a long war.
Most studies of the American Revolution trace its beginnings to the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763.
Okay.
A conflict with the French over territory that ended with a British victory. The 7 Years' War solidified Britain's stance as the most dominant European country in the world, as it gained vast tracts of land in the process.
Yeah.
However, as Britain tried to increase control of its American colonies in a variety of ways, colonists began rebelling. The expensive conflict had led to new and unpopular taxes. The British government attempted to raise revenue by taxing the colonies, first with the Stamp Act of 1765, and then with the Townshend Acts of 1767 and the Tea Act of 1773. This led to increasing resentment. The colonists felt that these taxes were unfair since they were being taxed without any representation in Parliament. The growing protests posed a simple question: why didn't the colonists have the same rights as British subjects? Two events in Boston in the early 1770s fanned the flames of resentment further. First, in 1770, colonial resistance was met with violence at the Boston Massacre, in which British soldiers killed 5 men after opening fire at a protesting mob. Second, in 1773, in response to the Tea Act, a group of Bostonians boarded British ships and dumped 342 chests of tea into Boston Harbor. These acts were catalysts for more resentment, as a vicious circle of retaliatory punitive measures from the British government only served to further enrage the colonists. Massachusetts and the New England area was now seen as a hotbed of rebellion, and the stage was set for an escalation into war. A group of delegates decided to meet in September 1774 to see what could be done about the situation. The First Continental Congress included the likes of George Washington from Virginia, as well as John and Samuel Adams from Massachusetts. They did not demand independence at this first meeting, but they did issue a declaration of the rights due to every citizen, including life, liberty, property, assembly, and trial by jury, a forerunner for what would come later.
That's it.
They were frustrated by taxation, but also at the continued British military presence, an issue that would rear its head very soon. They agreed to meet for a second Congress. In the convening time between Congresses, war broke out. On April 18, 1775, British soldiers marched to Concord to seize an arms cache that had been stockpiled by colonial militiamen. The two sides clashed at the Battle of Lexington and Concord, marking the first formal battle of the Revolutionary War.
I'm aware of this.
It was from this night that we also get one of the great tales and heroic figures of the Revolution, that of Paul Revere and the other men riding through the night to sound the alarm and prepare the Massachusetts militia. By the time the Second Congress met in the summer of 1775, with new additions such as Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, anti-British views were entrenched. They voted to raise a continental army with Washington as commander-in-chief. Thus began a series of battles throughout the fall and winter, starting with the Battle of Bunker Hill in Boston. Though it was a victory for the British, these early skirmishes actually supplied encouragement for the lowly colonial forces, giving them inspiration for the fight ahead. With more trouble brewing, as early battles didn't bring any conclusive victories on either side, the colonists cemented their position on July 4, 1776, when they voted to adopt the Declaration of Independence. This momentous document was the first time a nation's people formally asserted their right to choose their own government. It was drafted by a 5-man committee, but the primary author was Thomas Jefferson. His famous words in the preamble read, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." Herein lies the essence of the lasting impact of the American Revolution. These words, influenced by Enlightenment ideas, were a far cry from the European model of absolute monarchy. Though, of course, we know that this statement, in fact, referred to a small fraction of the population of the colonies. Women, men without property, and slaves were all not considered to share these inalienable rights. Nevertheless, this was the revolutionary beginning of what would be a long, imperfect process toward the democratic republic we know today. As the colonists were declaring independence, the British were sending a huge fleet with 34,000 soldiers across the Atlantic to crush the rebellion. After this point, the Revolutionary War settled into a pattern of wins, losses, and stalemates for the next several years. Military history enthusiasts can enjoy the tales of Washington retreating across the Delaware River before launching a surprise attack on Christmas night in the early stages of the war, or can reflect on the turning point through 1777-78 at Saratoga. The American victory at Saratoga was crucial as it paved the way for France, sensing British weakness, to enter the war on the colonist side. What had been a civil war now became an international conflict. With the help of the training provided by a professional army, notably from the French aristocrat Marquis de Lafayette, Washington's forces rallied in the north. In the south, the colonists suffered many setbacks, with the famous betrayal of Benedict Arnold's defection to the British being the most famous of several other mutinies in the Continental Army. The British occupied Georgia by early 1779 and captured Charleston, South Carolina in May 1780 under General Cornwallis. However, a change of leadership in the American ranks led to Nathaniel Greene coming to the fore. His forces managed to push the British back to the Yorktown Peninsula. With Washington also converging on the British, they were trapped and forced to surrender. Though contemporaries didn't necessarily see it that way, this surrender effectively marked the end of the Revolutionary War, with no further decisive action taking place before the British signed the Treaty of Paris in 1783. In signing the Treaty of Paris, Britain formally recognized the independence of the United States and the colonists were free to go about building their free and independent country. We know that the story of the United States from here is not quite the legendary march of progress towards freedom and liberty.
No,
The
I
shortcomings of the Founding Fathers and the damages done by subsequent U.S. governments are well known. Nevertheless, from a weak confederation of 13 colonies in the 18th century, in less than 200 years, the U.S. had become the most powerful nation in the world.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Some of the reasons for American success can be found in the rights enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. The American victory was a kind of miracle, not only in the logistical nature of the ragtag bunch of farmers overcoming an imperial army, but also in the triumph of new ideas over entrenched monarchical systems.
Yes, sir.
A new kind of politics and new ways of thinking have been born in history's greatest experiment, the United States.
Not a new perspective, but that gave me different information. Again, like I'll say, I knew some of it. I didn't know other parts. I took a bit of a issue when it came to how they said about obviously it was almost like a criticism, obviously, that rights weren't given to sort of obviously slaves and women and such. I just wanted to point out that actually slavery ended in the United States actually before most of South America ended their slavery. And the slave trade was actually more prevalent in South America than it was in North America. That isn't to discount any hardships and the fact that it was a horrible thing to have in North America at all. For someone to say that would be absolutely ridiculous. It was horrible, cruel, inhumane, and absolutely pseudoscience. To say that a certain group of people are worth less than us, than white people, for example, is absolutely ridiculous. And everyone now in the 21st century can appreciate that. And if you don't, then this channel isn't for you. But what I did want to touch upon is the fact that actually the United States made great strides. After the abolition, one of those words, of slavery in the 1860s, that actually became a leading country in the abolishment of the slave trade. The slave trade was long gone, but of slavery in general. And with regards to rights for women and African Americans, yes, of course it was horrible that fact, but we have to also appreciate that the United States was not alone in that. Do you think women had voting rights and rights of land, etc. in Europe anywhere? Like in the UK, for sure not. Like late into the 1800s, there still wasn't any, and early into the 1900s, there still wasn't any rights. So, again, the United States wasn't alone in that. It pretty much progressed at the same level as Europe did. But you have to remember that the United States is only a country of 200 or so years old, whereas Europe has been inhabited and has had civilization for thousands of years. And of course, if you want to talk about sort of Native Americans, yes, Native Americans were counted as civilization in North America prior to the landing of the Europeans. However, when I say civilization, I talk more about what was built in Europe, by the Romans and the Greeks, and I'm talking about structures, governments, stuff like that. That wasn't really prevalent necessarily in the culture of Native Americans. I'm not saying that to be inflammatory. It's historically true. They were tribal, and that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, when I say society, I'm talking about modern society as we know it, started thousands of years ago in Europe. And obviously in the United States, the United States was only created in 1776. So for that level of trajectory of improvement over just a 70 year period, as compared to what took the Europeans in Northern Europe and Greece and Italy 2,000 years to perfect, it's quite staggering, really. So yes, I find that to be greatly impressive. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of there. History is history. There were no truly good men, as we perceive them to be, in the 1700s. You know, just because you fought for, I mean, of course, George Washington was a good man, but I also don't believe that he was anti-slavery, you know, and that's fine because that was the time. I'm not saying it's fine as in it's a good thing to do. I'm saying we can't judge him for that. Those were the times, you know. In 200, 300 years, someone may look back and judge us on what we do today. Like, that's odd. How could they even consider that to be normal or human or correct? You know, times change, and people's perceptions of morality and good change. Anyway, on that's that note on that one. I maybe went on a tangent on that one. I also wanted to add with regards to them describing the UK as a monarchy. Yes, in the 1700s it was a monarchy. However, there was a parliament, and there was also a Magna Carta. So we did have a pseudo constitution. I call it a pseudo constitution because the UK constitution isn't actually codified as the US constitution is. I also want to add, I've got a little booklet that I do carry around with me in my little work bag of the US constitution and Bill of Rights. I think that's I always keep it handy, mostly to win arguments. But yeah, there was the Magna Carta, so it was technically a democracy. The king at the time was still head of state, as the king now is still technically head of state. It does not make it not necessarily democracy. It just means that the king in the 17 and 1800s wielded way more power than they do now. In fact, the kings or queens of this country now wield very little power realistically. Their job is more sentimental and sentimental isn't the word, ceremonial. Nonetheless, it's still an important role. But yes, it was a monarchy, also a democracy, but not a very effective one in my opinion back in the 1700s, and the American model largely superseded that. That gave genuine freedoms because there was no real freedom in England in the 1700s. Yes, technically there was, but you were still under the foot of the monarchy. Whilst the monarchy ate cake, we ate rotten bread, you know, so that's probably the reality of it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. An incredible piece of history, an incredible story. The revolution, again, the shots heard around the world. I have a question. The Minutemen, the Massachusetts Minutemen, was it? The Boston Minutemen? The Minutemen. Was that what the missiles are named after now? Because obviously the nuclear missiles in the United States, they're Minutemen class. I wonder if that's anything if that's related in any way. But anyway, yeah, incredible piece of history. Without the American Revolution, we wouldn't have the great superpower that is the United States now. I still believe it is the freest country in the world. I know it doesn't rank high on the freedom index, but I don't really trust that. It's genuine freedom where actually your actions do have consequences. So you can be extremely successful, or due to poor choices, you can be extremely poor. I'm not saying that everyone who's poor in the United States has made bad choices. Luck plays a big part in all of our lives. We would be foolish not to think so, but hard work can supersede it to a certain extent. But yeah, absolutely amazing. The creation of an amazing country. It continues to be amazing. It continues to police the world and rid it of all evil. That's my opinion. Others have different. That's fine. But yes, incredible story. Thank you very much, guys, for your recommendations. This was absolutely amazing. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you would like to in any way donate, there's a button underneath. I will be sending 20% to charity. I will show you the video at the end of May, so you will see that I'm not going to lie to you like that. I'm not a bad person. I think maybe you've seen that already. But thank you very much, guys. Have a fantastic day and keep tuned for more videos. The next video will be why not to mess with the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and then after that I'll be doing more reaction videos on the American Revolution, the oversimplified animated one, which should be fantastic. See you soon, guys.